the only hard costs you have is food and an occasional hotel room. It is damn near a 95+% profit margin industry compared to Coke. And here's the thing, when somebody buys a girl for sex and they like it, you don't need to go buy more girl to sell that guy more girl tomorrow night. I sell you a girl, hypothetically, you like it, you come back tomorrow night, I got the same girl. I'm renting her over and over until she dies, which on average is about a 7-8 year life expectancy according to the FBI. Once they're first turned out at age 12 on average here in America. They're dead or dying by the time that they can vote. But when you look at that and you compare it to cocaine, I sell you cocaine tonight, you like it, you come back to me. I need to take half of the money you gave me last night, go get more cocaine from my supplier to sell you more cocaine tomorrow. Same is true of guns or any other product. This is not a product. You're selling a human being. You're renting a human being until they die. And that is why every single gangbanger from Comps and Watts, where I live, all the way up to the biggest mafias in the world that we fight when we're in Southeast Asia, the Japanese and Russian mafias are running Southeast Asia, the Yakuza, the Russian mafias, every criminal, these guys are bright. They could be captains of industry had they just decided to do something legal with their life. They are smart guys, and they have moved away from running guns and drugs and into running human beings because the profit margin is unbeatable.
And welcome back to We Are the People. This is your host, Jason Preston. And again with my beautiful co-host, Alexia, on her birthday. Happy birthday, baby.
No better way to celebrate than with this company.
Yes, that's pretty awesome. Well, we have someone we're very excited about, which normally wouldn't do this on your birthday, but
I actually think we did film last year on my birthday, the year before on my birthday.
All right, well, shh. That's sad.
Fact checkers proved false.
Well, I just want to emphasize before we get started that our whole message, We the People, our what we really believe is it's the same fight it's always been. It is not left versus right. It is that we the people versus the elite. It is the rulers versus the ruled. And we try so hard to keep people focused on the fight that matters most, which is the fight in your backyard. It is a fight where you can make a difference. We believe that you can make a difference. We believe that we the people can make a difference. We do not believe in relegating our power to someone else, especially someone in DC. So, you know, our focus has been so much on corruption here in our backyard, and really nothing has become more important to us, especially the more we have found the problems with trafficking in our own backyards.
Absolutely.
So we have someone who honestly, like, she means a lot to me. I'll let Alexia introduce her, but I will just say this. Back in 2021, when I decided to run for Congress, I was teetering. I mean, I was intimidated, terrified. Like, you know, I felt so like out of my league. Like, how dare I even consider such a thing? And we were driving from through Arizona. We were on a work trip, and I listened to this fiery speech. And by the time it was over, I had made my decision that there was no way we had to do this. And the person that fiery speech was given by was none other than Leigh Dundas. So, Alexia, do you want to welcome and introduce Leigh?
Absolutely, with honor. Today we are joined by Leigh Dundas. She is a human rights attorney and fierce advocate for the people against the unchecked power of the elite. This is what happens when I don't bring my glasses. It's all truth, though. Leigh's no stranger to taking on rulers, whether it's battling child trafficking in Asia, exposing government overreach, or rallying for individual freedom right here in our backyards. She is a voice for those who refuse to be distracted by the DC circus, instead urging us to take control of our own backyards. With a career that spanned defending Fortune 500 companies to leading the charge against tyranny, Leigh brings a raw, unfiltered perspective to the fight that's always been the ruled versus the rulers. Welcome, Leigh, to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's an honor to be here in studio with you in Utah today.
Yeah. Well, we're pumped. We went to California just recently and had a chance to meet you. And we've met you a few times. You did a big rally in
Midway.
Utah, in Midway back in 2020. I'm sure some of our listeners and viewers will remember that.
And then all the convoys that you helped orchestrate.
And then the convoys.
Yeah, so remember all the big convoys that happened during 2020 nationally. She was behind that. I mean, she is an absolute powerhouse, and I really want to get into her. She she is fighting a lot of the same fights we're fighting. And I really want to get into her story. But again, I will tell you this, like, the reason we're so invested in her is because she is an absolute powerhouse. And she is just battling the system in Florida. And obviously we're very connected to Florida and we care about Florida. And the story she's going to tell you is going to blow your mind. And it is our hope and prayer that when she has brought justice to some of this case that she's working on in Florida, that we can get her in Utah to help bring down some of the corruption in this state. Because as all of you know, it's out of control in this state, and we need a fighter. We need help from someone like Leigh. So, anyways, Leigh, we're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me again. It's an honor to be here. And sorry, guys, if my hair's looking a little funky monkey today. It was gusty out there. There was like snow showers and stuff as we were driving in, but we made it safe and sound. And yeah, it sounds like you've got some stuff going on in Florida. I saw a headline a couple of weeks ago about that judge that had been picked up on child porn possession. And
in Utah.
Yeah, from here in Utah. And from what I've heard, it was the tip of the iceberg. And I had this. Silly me. I labored under this misapprehension that it was better in the red states. And between what I'm seeing here in Utah, just the tip of it, and then what I've fallen face first into with this case in Florida, it looks, we knew trafficking and child sex abuse and rape, it's a crime that knows no borders and no boundaries and no socioeconomic or demographic, restrictions. But you really kind of have hope that the system is at least challenging it on a more, in a more loyal and faithful and appropriate way in the red states. But apparently not, is really the moral of the story. So feel free to ask me questions, or I could just dive into what's going on down in DeSantis' estate.
Yeah, because this is one of those stories that'll blow your minds, because you realize how much control the system, whether, I don't know if you call it conspiracy, but this story will just blow your mind about how connected and how protected some of these predators are. Yeah. And we see it in Utah, and this is a great example of how it happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, share your story.
Sure thing. Well, I got a call from normal people, that's what we all are. And a woman had said, you got to talk to this other person. She's a mom in Michigan, and she's got a young girl, and it's a really heartbreaking story. And the girl was being sexually abused, allegedly. And of course, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, right? So if I forget to say the word alleged or the accused or whatever, know that it's disclaimer that it's in there. But allegedly, the father had been abusing the girl. And I said, with all due respect, very sad story, but this is happening everywhere. And she's like, please. And I don't know how the woman got through. I had 10,000 unanswered voicemails and emails at that point in time when she called a couple of years ago. But she caught my ear. I said, I'll give your lady, 15 minutes. And 15 minutes became 3 hours pretty quickly. So long story somewhat shorter, because it is a 10-year saga. This very nice, normal soccer mom like all of us, right? Well, okay, you're not a soccer mom, but you get the idea. Just normal people living her life in Michigan, had been married to a cop. They got divorced. They had one daughter. The kid was 17 months old at the time they divorced. And like many divorced parents, they wanted a sort of collegial sort of thing. And the dad, there we go. Oh, thank you. The dad would blow into town every other weekend, grab the baby from the mom's house, go to his mom's house, the paternal grandmother, to exercise the every other weekend visitation. All of which is stone cold normal and happens pretty much every freaking day of the week. Like, this is not, an unusual setup. What was a little more unusual is that when the dad, the cop father, would take his baby girl to his mom's house, his mother was married to a sex offender who was already on the registry in that state for having admitted, this was not like circumstantial evidence, he admitted out of his own lips to having spent 2 years raping a wheelchair-bound, brain-injured physical therapy patient of his when she was a handicapped girl from the ages of 13 to 15 or something like that. And he got caught when a nurse walked into the room and saw his tongue down this little teenager's who's wheelchair-bound's throat, and the nurse did the appropriate thing, thank God, and reported it. And the cops came and they interviewed him, and he's like, yeah, it was me, or whatever he said. There was a full-on detectives report. Actually, I'll tell you what he said, because it's really appalling. He admitted to the detectives, and if you read the report, if I'm getting it right, it's pretty close, don't quote me exactly, that the girl had worn short shorts to her physical therapy appointment. Can't do that. Heaven forbid you wear short shorts in a humid state in the summer to your physical therapy appointment when they're having to move your legs around because you're a wheelchair-bound girl, God forbid, right? So she wears short shorts to the appointment, and he became very aroused and apparently decided it would be a good idea to, quote, stick his penis into her vagina. And he, quote, didn't last long because he was so aroused, after which he pulled his penis out of her vagina and cleaned up the sperm with a hanky. So again, this isn't exactly like, well, we think, this is direct quotes I am giving you from what he told the detectives that the detectives wrote down in their report. So he ends up on the sex offender registry in Michigan. Now, I don't know how it's done in Utah because I don't live in Utah or Michigan, but I know how it's done in states near me, like in California. Once you're on the sex offender registry for having raped somebody, particularly a child, particularly a handicapped child, that typically means you can't have little girl clothes, and you can't be around little girls, and you can't be near schools and parks, and because we want to basically put that scarlet letter on you so that all the normal soccer moms can go, oh, that's a predator. Let's keep the little baby away from the predator. But not this frickin' cop. This charmer, who should know better because he's a cop, thinks nothing of taking his little baby girl over to his mom's house, who's married to this convicted sex offender I just told you about. And that's what he does every other weekend from age 17 months until the girl masters the English language a little bit, gets the ability to speak. And at age 4.5, she discloses to the mom. And what she discloses is pretty horrifying. Basically, not just the sex offender paternal step-grandfather, but also the biological dad, who's a cop. We're taking her downstairs in the sex offender's basement and basically taking turns with her, abusing her. And she discloses to the mom. The mom's a good person. The mom is horrified and goes running off to the police, and they sweep it under the carpet. Of course, daddy is a cop, right?
This is all still in Michigan at this point.
It's all still in Michigan. So they go run into Oakland County Sheriff's. It's under the control at that point in time of a charming individual by the name of Under Sheriff Michael McCabe, McCabe. Feel free to Google him. 43-year veteran policeman, sits on 13 different human trafficking and sex abuse, data sharing, intelligence sharing, federal, state, local law enforcement organizations. So this guy, his brother's a judge. This man is connected. It ain't his first day. And he's got the finger of the pulse on the pulse of what's going on with sex trafficking and all that jazz in his state because he sits on all these data sharing organizations. So what does he do? He doesn't get this report and go, I have a report that an already convicted sex offender is taking a baby into his basement and raping her again. This baby raper's up to no good again. No, he doesn't think maybe I should go do a knock knock and be like, hey, what's going on in your basement, buddy? You doing this again? Doesn't occur to him to do it. He doesn't have any of his deputies do it. I don't even think he picks up the phone and desk jockeys it and has probation and parole in that state, whoever's administering the sex offender registry, go out and be like, yo, is something wrong going on in your basement? No, can't be bothered. Sweeps it under the carpet. They do a quickie invest, close it out. Nothing to it. Bitter ex-wife fighting for custody is what they write it off to.
Oh, dear. Which
is a frickin' joke. And if you start Googling up the sex offenders involved in this case and you start hearing, oh, it's a bitter custody dispute and it's a he said, she said. No, it wasn't. No, it ain't. Because at the time the girl disclosed, guess who had 100% sole physical, legal, and emotional mental custody of that girl? The mom. Who's she fighting for custody? Herself? This is all the PR factory that a lot of times these abusers start spinning. They try to cloud it all up, make it all confusing. Nobody knows which ends up. So the mom is convinced her child is not telling a tall tale, that she's telling the truth. And she continues to push and push and push. And she finally catches the attention of the Michigan State Police and the Attorney General in the state of Michigan. And for their part, they actually did something right. They swear out, they get a search warrant out of a judge. And they go into the sex offender's basement where the abuse allegedly occurred. And they go in with their special light, like we see on CSI and SVU, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. And guess what they find? First of all, they find what looks like a Toys R Us showroom.
And now, you have pictures of all of this. Put up on the screen.
And if you guys want to splice the pictures in later, it's on my website, leighdundas.com, LEIGHDUNDAS.com. If you go to the child abuse case, scroll to the bottom. You'll see the crime scene photos I'm talking about right now. But the sex offender and the dad had tricked out the sex offender's basement into looking literally like Jeffrey the giraffe was down there. I mean, it's a little girl's bed, it's little girl's clothing, it's a little girl Holly hobby oven, it's little girl dollies, it's a little girl chalkboard with the girl's name on it. So you can't say that was one of his other grandchildren's bedroom. It was very clearly this little girl's bedroom when she was there. And right around the perimeter on the carpet, right around, the edge of the bed, if this is the bed, they find not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but 6 seminal fluid stains. This carpet comes up hot as heck for seminal fluid frickin' everywhere. So they dutifully cut them out. They throw down some evidence tags. You can literally see the evidence tags, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in the photos on my website. And they send it to the Michigan State Police Forensic Lab, where a month or 2 later, it comes back 160 septillion times more likely if it, meaning the seminal fluid stain, originated from the biological father than if it originated from any other unknown, unrelated contributor on the planet. Now, you may think 160 septillion is 7 zeros, because that's what I thought. I'm like, ooh, a septillion, probably 7 zeros after the number. No, it's 24 zeros after the number. It's 160,000,000.
So pretty much beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, this is DNA evidence, guys. Like, it don't lie. Okay, and it comes back 320 quadrillion on one of the seminal fluid stains connected to Grandpa, which is a 15 zeros. I thought it was 4. It's 15 zeros. So open and shut case. Based on the strength of the forensic DNA evidence, they go back to court. They get arrest warrants now for these 2 charmers. Grandpa's still living up in Michigan. They pick him up, no problem. Daddy Bear has flown down to Jacksonville, Florida. It's JSO, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, that picks up Daddy Bear. And when they strip him of all of his electronic devices, as they like to do during an arrest, and they send those in for review, I'm going to give you 3 guesses. Guess what they appear to have found on Daddy Bear's devices?
Child porn.
Yeah, they found what we call in the industry potential CSAM, child sexually abusive material, AKA apparent child porn. Now, you can't say definitively until you do a full workup that it's child porn, because there's AI now, and there's little tiny Asian women like we rescue out of the brothels in Asia. Like, I look like I'm a gigantic, enormous, monster compared to them. They're 4'9" when they're full grown, and, size AAA on the bra. So a lot of times, until you've run it through some appropriate measures forensically, you can't swear for certain that it's a child. But I will tell you what the 2 officers, law enforcement officers, one was a trooper, one was the assistant attorney general in charge of this case at the time, swore to under oath in a deposition in 2023. They found 10,000 plus pictures. Okay, some of which, not all, they didn't get all the way through them for a reason I'll get to in a second. Some of which in the early viewing of this appeared to show naked pictures of both boys and girls that appeared to be possibly prepubescent. That was one guy's quote. And the other guy's quote is they saw on these electronic devices pictures of, quote, very young children being sexually assaulted by adults, and pictures of, quote, very young children appearing to be tortured and or held in bondage. Charming.
Wow.
And he went out of his way, I think, to our earlier point here, to distinguish. Didn't look like a 17-year-old that might have been 17, might have been 19. They said, quote, very young children.
That seems pretty damning that you would find all this evidence, the seminal fluid, the videos. Should be an open and shut case.
It should be. And you
can I add something too on that?
Yeah.
Because, to our listeners, this is the type of stuff we look at here in Utah with like the David Hamblin case, where you have so many victims come forward. The guy literally admits to raping his daughters on the phone. He admitted it. It's recorded, and yet we can't get an arrest. And so when you're here in Utah and you wonder, how come we can't get an arrest? How come we can't get this guy behind bars? Just follow this story, because this is what we are fighting against.
Yeah. So to quote something I told my husband back when he was Googling our new address when we had just moved into our house 26 years ago and the internet was a baby thing. And they had just released that app where you could put in your address and see how many sex offenders showed up on little red lights around your address or whatever address you're putting in. And, there were a ton of red lights over across the freeway, which is a not as nice area. And then a few red lights as you got on our side of the freeway. And then you get up into the hills where we live and there's like no little alerts right near us saying. And my husband looks at this, geography, and he goes, that's great. There's no sex offenders living in our neighborhood up here. And I go, oh, no, that's not what that means. That just means the sex offenders are judges and cops and lawyers and prosecutors, and we don't arrest ourselves. That's what that means.
They haven't been caught yet.
That's Utah.
Yeah, it's Utah, baby. And that's, I think, a little bit of what's going on in this case, if I had to guess. Of course, I'm just guessing at this point, but time will tell. So your point, though, Alexia, is spot on. Like, the evidence is really strong. And so these guys get arrested. DeSantis initially extradites the dad who was down in Jacksonville when they picked him up back to Michigan for prosecution. And when they go to court on the bond hearing, the judge is like, it was Judge Nancy Karniak, and she says something along the lines of like, I've been on the bench 20 years and I've never failed to issue bond, basically, or bail. She lets the guys bail out. It's standard. You post a bond, you bail out, and then you come back for your criminal trial. That's how it works. Unless you're a really bad dude. She doesn't allow them to bond out. They are held without bail, without bond. She just locks them down. So they go to jail for months. And then a really interesting hiccup occurs where one of the male prosecutors at the Attorney General's office
in Michigan,
up with Dana Nessel's office, apparently had fallen in love or dated some adult victim on another one of the rape cases he was in charge of, which is a conflict of interest. I get it. So what does Dana Nessel do, though? She just washes her hands of this guy's entire caseload, including this girl's case. Now, we've got the he said, she said case. I get the girl is 4 years old. That is not any prosecutor's dream case. You've got a very young witness. But you also have not one, but 6 seminal fluid stains. And she had alleged she was abused by the queen chess piece. She told everybody, the cops, where the chess game was. They walk into the basement. The chess game is exactly where she said. The eagle statue. Like, there's a lot of confirmatory evidence here. And even if you want to just say, you know what, that's a he said, she said, we're not going to roll the dice. Yo, dude, just take the kiddie porn case. That is a rock solid case. 10,000 photos, a lot of which show pictures of, quote, very young children appearing to be raped, tortured, and held in bondage. I mean, like, just roll with that. You don't even need to do the he said, she said child sex abuse case. You can just go on the porn possession. But she refused to do any of that. So guess what that means? Let the lawyer weigh in. What that means is these guys have to be let out of jail. There's no pending prosecution now. They're free. So they both decide it's in their best interest to go jackrabbiting back to DeSantis' little state where they make happy little homes for themselves down there. And because, with these guys, it's never enough, right? It's never enough. They could have just been happy, free, go mind your own business. What does the dad do? He moves for sole physical custody of his minor daughter.
They just can't help themselves.
No, they just can't help themselves. He wants to get his claws right back into her. And by the way, I should tell you that at this point, he's worked Gainesville PD. He's worked as a captain at Alcohol, Tobacco, and Beverage. And finally, he ended up at a major metropolitan city school district policing position.
Yeah, this is crazy.
That's where he was picked up from. Get this. So there he is being a school police officer. They take him into custody. They take his devices. They find all sorts of horrible stuff on his devices. He goes to jail for a few months, comes back down to Florida. Guess who hires him right back?
The school.
The school hires him back. Guess what they do after that? They freaking promote him into being the acting school police chief. Of this county.
That's got to be a dream job for a child predator.
You kidding me? I mean, I don't know how it works in Utah, but you're a school cop in my state. That means you have a hall pass times 10, man. You are able not just to go in and out of the locker room areas and the bathrooms if you're the same sex as the people in it, although now who knows? Everything goes in Cali. But because that's where people snort cocaine. Right? I mean, this is where the stuff goes down. Kids get bullied. Kids get beat up. Kids do drugs and smoke and whatever. So school cops in California for many years have just enjoyed, there's no restrictions on where they can go on campus. And the fact that this guy was in that position for 5 years on and off, minus the brief stint in jail up in Michigan, I mean, just makes me cringe. If I were a mother in that school district, I would be on fire right now.
Yeah.
I would be like, you freaking find those 10,000 photos downloaded from that man's phone and his laptop, and you run those through and make sure my kid's face and body isn't on those photos. Did anybody do that? I don't think so, because you know what else Dana Nessel did? Now, mind you, Dana Nessel is the Attorney General of the state of Michigan. She took an oath when she became a lawyer. She took another oath when she became the top cop in her state. That's what the Attorney General is, as the chief prosecuting person in any state. And her job is to put away the criminals. So not only does she let this case go, she then orders the 2 cops who were mid-review, and they'd already found that damning stuff I told you about. She orders them to stop working on the case, to stop doing their document review of the images from his phone. The quote was to just freeze it. and to not document it. So the two cops, the AG and the trooper, stand down, they drop it. A few weeks goes by and they're like not doing anything with the devices. Like it's just, in purgatory, a stalemate here. And so then an order comes down from the cop in the deposition said, I couldn't tell you who. Really? Or did he not want to tell you who? I couldn't tell you who gave me the order, but from the AG's office and the Michigan State Police Detective Command staff, so between those two, to just dispose of it. And then he goes on, because I'm like reading the transcript after the fact, and I'm like, did I just read? Did Dana Nessel's office or her personnel just order him to throw the devices that had the CSAM evidence, alleged CSAM evidence on there, the kiddie porn evidence, in the trash? So he clarified, because he's in deposition, he goes, like when I say dispose of it, I don't actually mean throw it in the trash, but give it back to the suspect.
Jeez.
Give the murder suspect back their weapon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, really, lady? That's how you roll in Michigan? You're the top cop. You're supposed to put bad guys away. When somebody robs a bank, do you go, oh, let's put you in jail for a little while? Oh, just kidding. We're going to let you out. Oh, and here's your gun back, and here's all the money you stole. Go down to the Sunshine State and live a happy life down there.
And the key to the bank while they're at it.
You got to wonder what they're up to in Michigan. Right. So that's how they're rolling up there. That's pretty crazy. So of course, yeah. So dad ends up back in Michigan on the police beat duty at the school. Now he's acting chief of school police in his little area. And he puts in a motion in front of Alachua County Family Law Courthouse to get possession of his kid, which he's never really had. He only had weekends, and that was by a very conciliatory arrangement, which the mom cut off after the kid disclosed she'd been basically being raped by the grandpa and the dad. So now he wants full custody of this kid he's never had custody of, and he pulls in the Honorable. Let me say that again, in case he's watching. The Honorable. Big, big air quotes around that term. The Honorable James P. Nylon. That's spelled Nilon if you would like to Google him, or if you would like to file a Judicial Qualifications Commission complaint against him in the state of Florida, which you can do by following the 4 numbered steps at the very bottom of the page, child abuse case on leighdundas.com. I give you homework if you're so inclined. So James P. Nylon, in his utter judicial wisdom, good old boy from the South. Yeah, he's got a really creepy grin too. This is his grin. I'm gonna do it for you right now. Break it up. It's a little heavy. Literally, not all of his photos look like that, but there's one. And when you guys Google it and you come across it, you'll be like, dang, she did a really good impression of that. It's like creepy. You look at it, you're like, ooh, what do you got going on under your robe there, buddy? So anyway, this is now the family law case, and it's in front of this lovely man. Again, big air quotes. First thing he does is he dismisses all of the kids' forensically trained therapists from the case. She's healing from the trauma. She's making progress. Can't have that. Dismisses all of them. Puts his own group of therapists on the case. None of which have any child sexual abuse training, forensic training. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Let's put an MFCC on there, because people who talk you out of getting divorced, they're totally qualified to handle little children who've been allegedly being sexually assaulted by 2 men in a sex predator's basement since she was 17 months old. I mean, yeah, oh, you're having an argument about who took out the trash. Like, why don't you make nice? That skill set totally transfers to helping little preschool-age child rape victims, not... He assigns this woman he puts on the case as the attending therapist to be the kid's therapist, the mom's therapist, and the reunification therapist. He wants to reunify the alleged rapist father with the kid and the mom. So a little bit of a confusion there, kind of competing interests there, not what you would normally do. And then he forbids the therapist from letting the child talk about her abuse. He forbids the mother from letting the child talk about the abuse. He forbids the mother from talking to the therapist. So he's got them all gag ordered. Like, I don't even know in what universe you could even do this, but he does. And within a few months, the kid is rapidly rendered suicidal because the therapists, when she starts to talk about her abuse, literally say, there's testimony in open court, this girl under oath at age 9, and she's like, yeah, and I would try to tell my therapist something, and she would say, no, 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 and your truth is your father never hurt you.
Jeez.
You want to spin out a rape survivor of any age? Not a 5 or a 9-year-old, but somebody who's 55? Tell her she didn't live through what she lived through. That woman will go batshit on you and kill you, and if she's not allowed to, she'll be in a padded room, because you cannot deny people their truth when their truth is so primitive and so violative and so unjust. So he's having the therapist, he's ordering the therapist. He ordered the therapist on the record to do these things. And she does. She follows the marching orders. So the kid is now suicidal. She is praying every night when they go into the bathroom prays to God that her mother will kill her and let her start a new life. Tells the therapist this, tells the judge this. The judge does an interview with the girl on the record, and he's like, yeah, anything else you want to tell me? And she's like, yeah, about my dad. The judge has spent the first hour trying to distract her. Oh, tell me how your Christmas was. Oh, tell me how you guys celebrate Christmas. Finally, this little girl's like a Leigh Dundas or an Alexia. She's like, yeah, can we get back to brass tacks here? I'm in third grade. You're a judge in a with a gavel and a gown on. But yeah, I do have something else I want to tell you. Kind of hard to talk about. It's about my dad. He hurt me. He touched me in my private places, and it felt uncomfortable. And this joker of a judge is like, oh, he can't even acknowledge her. He's like, I am sorry. Like, what? And then he's like, anything else? And she's like, yeah, when I go to my therapist, I try to say X, Y, or Z, and she won't let me. And that makes me feel worthless.
Wow.
And this frickin' judge doesn't go, oh, about that. It's probably because I made an order to not let you talk about it. Doesn't own up to it. He goes, oh, really? Is that what happens? Just feigns ignorance. So then it gets worse.
Can't imagine that.
The dad has a charming attorney. I think her name was Alona Sharon. I hate these women who represent these people. I hate them with a passion. You're going to go to law school. Go do something good with your life. So she puts a motion in front of the court to hold the mother in contempt.
The mother,
the non-offending parent. That's the vernacular we like to use. The non-offending parent. You know, the one who's not allegedly raping the kid? Yeah. To hold the mother in contempt. I'm like, when the mom first told me this, I was like, what? This can't be true. She's like, oh yeah, 2-week trial on contempt charges in December of 2020 when we were all fighting for the right to breathe air. This mom is stuck in court in Alachua Family Courthouse in front of the Honorable Presiding Judge James P. Nylon on a 2-week mini trial that the father's attorney has brought against the mom to hold the mother in contempt of court for what you might ask, for getting her kid therapy after her kid was rendered suicidal. Now, mind you, she put, I think it was 7 motions in front of the court over 6 months trying to get permission to get her kid real therapy. He just ignored them. Finally, the mom's like, I got to get my kid therapy or she's going to die. Hold the mother in contempt of court for having gotten her suicidal child rendered suicidal by the judge's orders, if you ask me, therapy, and for having cooperated with the Michigan State Police Attorney General investigation that yielded the rock-solid, incontrovertible DNA evidence we already talked about, and more than 10,000 pictures, some of which included very young children appearing to be raped, tortured, and held in bondage. That was the contempt motion, and not only did this joker of a judge entertain it, at the end of the 2-week trial, on his last day on the bench, December 31st, 2020, he held the mother in contempt of court for nothing, for having gotten therapy for a kid, and for having cooperated with the police, and fined her $237,629.21, bankrupting the mother the next day.
Wow.
The mother is living and has been for the last 5 years. She works for a Fortune 500 company. She's smart people like you and me and a lot of people watching. This woman nets, forget if it was $542 or $524. She nets 500 and change. 500, not 5,000, every 2 weeks. Works her butt off to net less than the guy sweeping the floor at the Mexican food restaurant. So, yeah, and then the judge, when one of the therapists had said something about, the kid keeps trying to disclose abuse, and I think I need to report it because I'm a mandated reporter. On the record, the judge ordered the therapist to not report to state authorities. He said, that is why I would say it is appropriate to not report to state authorities. I'm like, okay, let me Google Florida law because I'm not a Florida attorney, but in most other states, therapists are mandated reporters, and judges and lawyers are also usually mandated reporters. Sure as shooting. Guess who's mandated reporters in the Sunshine State? The judge and the therapist. And I'm like, am I really reading a transcript right now where it appears there was a felony conspiracy to agree to not report felony child abuse? Wow. That's something special. Now, the law has a bunch of exceptions, and maybe the judge was well within one of the exceptions, but you got to wonder. So then he hands the case to his good friend, Judge Robert K. Groeb, Groeb, and He tells Judge Grobe exactly what he wants to have happen with this case, which Judge Grobe admits to on August 8th of 2024, about 9 months ago. He's like, oh yeah, when Judge Nylon handed me this case and his impressions of it, direct quote, I'm like, so now you're just admitting that you're not impartial and unbiased and that you got your marching orders from the retiring presiding judge. So he disallows into the child custody hearing that went on a couple months ago, January 6th and 7th of this year. This custody motion of the dad's finally got its own trial date. He disallows any evidence of alleged sexual molestation. That's what he refers to the DNA evidence as. I'm like, excuse me? DNA evidence is not alleged. Alleged is, I said you did X, you say no, I didn't. That's like, okay, you and I, like he said, she said, different opinions. You got DNA evidence. That's DNA evidence. That's like subjective, objective. Like, you need to go back to school, Judge. I'm sorry. Oh, and this judge, super charmer. Guess where he was born? Michigan.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And guess who he represented before he became a judge? He was a state prosecutor, and I think before that, on and off, I think he did it more than once. He was the lawyer for the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Go figure, another really connected person in a position of power in reference to this case, just like that Oakland County sheriff I mentioned who refused to investigate the first time, right? So Judge Robert K. Grobe disallows any of the actual evidence and further disallows the child from even saying which parent she wants to live with. So he lets Daddy Bear put on his whole entire case on Monday, January 6th. I was pretty pissed off. I'm like, you know what, Judge? You don't want to let the evidence inside your court? I'll put the evidence on outside the court. I did a 2-hour press conference on the courthouse steps. Apparently they weren't real happy about that. Asks me if I give a shit.
This is why we love you.
All I got to say, Judge Grobe, is you better be damn happy that I didn't have enough time to make a second banner. I had banners made that were like 20 feet wide, 5 feet tall. Judge Nylon's face is on there, the one like that, with all of his quotes about, I would say it's appropriate to not inform the state authorities. Yeah, even though you're a mandated reporter, with him fining the mother for what? Oh yeah, for cooperating with the cops. Yeah, all those choice quotes were on there right next to the judge's face. I didn't have time or the energy to put Judge Grobe's face on its own separate banner, but try me, because I'm not beyond doing a second press conference down in the Sunshine State. So this joker is supposed to be holding a 2-day trial. He lets Daddy's people go all on Monday while I'm out on the courthouse steps doing my song and dance and getting the story out. And at the end of the day, he decides to rule, after only having heard the dad's case, that the dad did not meet his burden to get 100% custody of the kid. So technically he denied the dad's motion for sole custody, meaning the mom technically won that round, meaning the mom probably can't appeal. I don't know. I'm not a family lawyer in Florida, but that's what I'm guessing. So it was very cleverly done because now the mom can't appeal the ruling. And what happens is it goes back to an earlier agreement on the case, 50-50. Unsupervised, he orders, unsupervised 50-50 visitation to commence immediately, which is long weekends and summers. First long weekend the kid was supposed to spend with dad was MLK weekend. Luckily, they couldn't get their ducks in a row in time to pull that off. Second long weekend was President's Day weekend. Mom goes down to the state of Florida. She's been ordered to produce her kid. She's scared to death not to, because the prior judge held her in contempt for doing what? For cooperating with the cops. So like she's had her butt handed to her for absolutely no crime. Like she's going to follow the rules, right? Shows up with her kid in the state. DCF gets wind. The kid is in the state. That daddy is who he is. DCF is their Department of Child and Family. It's their child protective agency. And they pick up the phone. They call mom apparently, and they order her to come into the building. She brings her kid into the building. She thinks the kid's going to be interviewed by some social worker. Oh, hell no. That apparently is not how the Child Protective Agency in Florida keeps children safe in the state of Florida in 2025. No, she brings her kid in. Kid meets female social worker. Seems normal enough at first. All of a sudden, who shows up in the middle of this equation? A passing Jacksonville sheriff. Now, daddy lives in that area. Right? Daddy's been a cop for a lot of years. Jacksonville sheriff shows up in full bulletproof vest with his little walkie-talkie, according to what I heard later, and starts interviewing the kid. Ask the sheriff if he has any training as a detective. 0, apparently. Ask the detective or the guy if he's had any training in, I don't know, interviewing a rape victim of any age. 0, from what I heard. Ask the guy if he's had any experience interviewing any child abuse victim, let alone a young child abuse victim whose perpetrator was a convicted sex offender on the one hand, and on the other hand, a school police chief who also wears an almost identical uniform to the guy who's now trying to interview her.
Triggering much?
Triggered much. Thank you. I was about to say that. Thank you. Yeah, like, right? I'm not the only one who had this thought. I'm like, oh, wow. And then, a few minutes goes by. The kid is so triggered she can hardly talk, even though she's now 13 years old. She's trying to like spell out, her fears. And I guess she said something along the lines, I wasn't there, I don't know. Something along the lines of, if I go back to my dad this weekend, I won't walk out of there alive. Like he had long and many times, as is very common with child sexual abuse, threatened. If you ask, oh, how come the kid didn't disclose earlier? Heads up, sex abuse training 101 for you mid podcast here. The abusers always threaten to kill the kid. In many cases, that's how they keep him silent, right? So apparently, allegedly, that was done here. So the girl's like, yeah, now that I told him, now that he spent 4 months in jail a couple of years ago before they so unwisely let him go, I'm sure he will kill me, right? So this cop with zero training who had been yanked off the patrol beat, cruising down the streets in this major city, mishears a statement of homicide, fear of homicide, and goes, oh, this girl must be suicidal. We're just going to 51. Well, we call it a 5150 in California. In Florida, they call it a Baker Act commitment. Yeah, you guys know because you're from Florida, right? And tell me, is Baker Act commitments like, are they abused down there? I mean, I get that it's for a good reason. You want to keep crazy people safe from killing themselves and others if they're actually crazy. But it seems to me that these things are done overmuch. After what I said.
Baker acting, someone will make someone crazy.
Right? Yeah, lock me up for 3 days and see how crazy I get. Yeah, no. So this girl ends up, cop comes out of the back of the building, got the kid by the scruff of the neck, throws her in the back of a squad car. Ask me how many times I have lectured cops and prosecutors, federal, local, state police, military police at Camp Pendleton in a secure area. All I did was train cops, in many cases, on and off for the last decade. When you have a child trafficking victim, when you have a rape victim, this is how we do it. This is how we don't do it. At the top of the this is how we don't do it list is you do not arrest the victim or do anything that looks like arresting the victim. Involuntarily detain them, lock them in the back of a cop car where there's no door handles and the criminals sit and they vomit. Yeah, no, you don't do that. And I don't want to hear that that's how you keep them safe. There are better ways to keep children who are sex crime victims safe in this day and age.
That's infuriating.
The mother is hysterical, apparently. The mother begs the cop to be allowed to ride with her daughter in the back of the cop car, so they both get incarcerated in the back of the cop car. I'm like, wow, just wow. Taken across town and thrown into a lockdown violent juvenile psych ward where they have 8-year-olds bending over at the waist and ramming their head into the wall. Where they have 8 and 10-year-olds leaping on top of staff members and kidney punching them until 3 adult other staff members have to yank the 3rd grader off the adult. Can't go outside. When you do go outside, they don't have real grass. Why? The girls eat the grass and it has pesticide and they kill each other. Can't have real shampoo. Guess what has holes in the doors? So the girls aren't committing suicide while they're in the bathroom. That doesn't trigger any female to be watched while we're peeing in the bathroom, whether you've been sex abused or not. Oh my gosh. Like, hello.
Wow.
So there she sat from Friday night, Valentine's Day, 5 p.m. That was her reward for saying, my police chief father raped me for years, and telling her truth to another Florida cop. That is how Florida's Department of Child and Family kept her safe, not by doing a forensic interview with a trained social worker, but by having some know-nothing cop lock her down in a psych ward for 5 days. And I will tell you, that psych ward took in something like 22 unaccompanied minor females. Those police cruisers were going through the portico, dropping those girls off once an hour all that long holiday weekend. Guess who gets billed for that? The parents' health insurance. And if they don't have health insurance, one of the state agency picks up that bill. That is a money-making scheme. Yeah, I'm coming for you when I get done with this case. Oh, Baker Act state agencies in Florida. Give me a break. So that happened. And then finally the girl lets out, goes back to Michigan. And the next scheduled weekend was this past week, spring break she had. She was supposed to spend 8 glorious days and nights with the man that she had said had raped her and whose seminal fluid stains were found all over a convicted sex offender's basement right under the little girl bed that came back from the police lab at whatever it was. Septillion, 160 septillion times more likely it was daddy's penis who ejaculated on that floor underneath her bed and near her bed than anybody else. Yeah, go figure. So luckily the dad apparently figured that maybe his time was running out in Florida because he decided to not exercise his custodial visitation over spring break. But all of a sudden up in Michigan, I heard through the grapevine that the week prior to spring break, every time the girl would go to get dropped off at junior high, and this is rural Michigan, this is backwoods, there were not one, but a few police cruisers stacked up in the drop-off lane at her rural country day school. Ask me why, I'll tell you I don't know. Do I have some guesses? Hell yes, I have some guesses, and then I'll shut up because this has been the longest story of my life.
No.
What it looks like to me at year 30, right? I got into law school when I was 17 years old. I got into Yale Law School and pretty much every other law school in the country. I've been a practicing attorney now for 30 years. I've done litigation, not in this realm. I represented Fortune 500 companies, but I can smell a rat a mile off. And what it looks like to me is very possibly we have facts constitutive of a potential apparent conspiracy, multi-state conspiracy at the highest levels between a state attorney general's office, a deputy sheriff of a county in Michigan, and now not one but two family law judges and a child welfare agency, DCF, Department of Child and Family in Florida, to co-act in a way that appears to intentionally be burying a lot of pretty damn compelling evidence of child rape and almost incontrovertible evidence of apparent child pornography. And the girl had alleged, and she told the judge that day he interviewed her, I forgot to mention this, that her daddy would, quote, sometimes make me take my clothes off and videotape me with his cell phone dancing. And you know what the judge did after that little interview of him and her? He sealed the transcript so nobody could find out that this kid was suicidal after he had ordered the therapist to not talk to her, which made her suicidal. And so that nobody else could find out that this child had just accused a guy who went on, or possibly already was, a police chief of a school, county school district, of making and distributing child pornography of his own daughter. Yeah, looks like to me Dana Nessel and DeSantis at this point. Yeah, DeSantis wasn't involved in the ins and outs of this, but I'm sorry, at this point, this case has been flapping like a freaking catfish out of the water in the bottom of a boat for a freaking few months now, my friend. This ain't my first podcast. It ain't my first press conference. What happens on your watch, whether it's a direct result of your action or inaction, is also attributable to you when you're in a position of authority and power. You need to do better. I don't think Casey DeSantis would think very highly of this right now. And by the way, your AG's office and your Judicial Qualifications Commission and the people who work in DeSantis' office are busy because I have had people saying, you know what, you don't like this case? You think you smell a rat here? Go write it up. Go put it on their doorstep. Go ask them to act. And they're getting form letters going, oh yeah, too bad, so sad, nothing we can do. Really? Shame on you.
So what's next? Is there any potential for justice in the foreseeable future?
Well, I think y'all know me well enough to know that I never say die, so... there's always irons in the fire, and there's always more than one way to skin a cat, as awful as that visual is. But yeah, I think if the father knew what was good for him, he'd quit trying to get his claws on this kid, because this kid now has a lot of people in a lot of very high places who give a shit about her. Top of that heap is me.
And she's what now? 14?
She's almost 14. How dare you not let an almost 14-year-old child testify? You know what that judge said? He goes, I've been a sitting judge on the family law bench, the second judge, for 15 years. I've had hundreds of parents ask me to have their kids testify in custodial modification proceedings, and I think I've only let it happen 2 or 3 times. It's state Florida appellate law that says children are relevant, a child's opinion is relevant, and if they're basically old enough to understand the truth from a lie, you should let them testify as to which parent they want to live with, particularly in a case like this where there's some serious stuff going on. Couldn't be bothered. You're a family law judge. You have complete power over the rest of these children's lives, and it never occurs to you to actually hear from the horse's mouth and take that into consideration. How dare you be on the family law bench? These judges were rolling not like it was 2020 or 2025, but like it was 1725. Talk about dinosaur relics from the dark ages. They have no business being on any bench. Criminal law bench, family law bench, civil bench. They should be disbarred and disrobed, in my humble opinion, for their actions, some of which I contend are probably likely felonies. And I am hereby asking the Judicial Qualifications Commission to undertake a top-down investigation on both of these judges as it relates to this case and all other cases they have handled, because I don't think this is the first time that Judge James P. Nylon silenced people, gag ordered them, ordered therapists to not report child abuse on the record. I'd be shocked if that was his first goat rope like that.
So, Leigh, a lot of people are familiar with stories like Pizzagate, or I don't want to say stories, but situations like Pizzagate, Epstein Island, some of these big national trafficking stories people hear about, how concerned should people be about their own backyards?
Very. Very. I mean, we think, child trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry. 40 million people are currently enslaved by best estimates. That is every single person in California. That's our population right now. That is like waking up tomorrow and every single person, man, woman, and child, is chained to a bed being consecutively raped, serially raped 5-10 times a night for profit. Or stuck on a shrimping boat in the South China Sea getting shrimp for free, or stuck in a mine making the metals that go into our phones, right? That is what labor and sex trafficking looks like. It's a huge problem. But the reality is that it doesn't just happen over there. I get these little ladies when we're briefing churches, and they come up and they're like, it's so sad that happens. And I'm like, it happens everywhere. And they're like, well, not in our town. I mean, we're in Nebraska, or a flyover state, and it's a little town. I'm like, do you have a hotel? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, maybe not. Well, do you have a motel? Yeah, I mean, we have one or two. It happens. They're the new brothels. The pimps don't need a red light district. They just run a Super 8 or a Motel 6 room. They slam 8 or 10 girls in there. And, the guys, the reason sex trafficking and human trafficking is the second largest and fastest growing crime in the world is because of this, in part. These men, and they are your pastor, they are the leader of some local sect of the Mormon church or the Catholic church or the Buddhist. It knows no boundaries, right? They are the Boy Scout leader. They're the architect. They're your accountant. They're your husband. They're your brother. We did a sting once in Huntington Beach, walked into the task force meeting the next Monday, and the cop was shaking his head. I'm like, why so down? And he's like, one of the guys we arrested in this 2020 where they, do an entrapment type thing. It's not technically entrapment, but the guy comes thinking he's going to get with an underage girl. And then it's like, shocker, the police are here to arrest you instead. His brother showed up. They had to arrest the cop's brother.
Oh my gosh.
But to my point, it's not out there. It's not over there. So these guys, and they're guys, no offense, they're guys just like my husband, just like you. They wait until the wife goes on a business trip. They send the kids, the 4, 6, 8-year-old little girl, down to the neighbor's house or do a Girl Scout jamboree a little overnight, and they pick up one of these, and they're bored, and they order pizza in. And then they keep scrolling to whatever the new Backpage is, since Backpage finally got taken down. And they order up whatever they want. Boy, girl, old, young, prepubescent, looks prepubescent. And they get delivered to their front door. They don't need to get in their car and go to a skanky neighborhood and go to the wrong side of the tracks and risk getting their hoo-ha out and, some cop rolling up over the train track and busting them with their you-know-what in their hands. They can just get the girl directly in the comfort of their own house. Wife walks back in on Monday night, has no idea that dad had a hooker in her bed, and the hooker was not a hooker. She was a 13-year-old underage girl.
I think that's the thing. I think people think of this type of stuff happening first and foremost, OUR, and I think this has put a lot of people said, oh, it's out there. It's, and the movie that OUR came out with,
Sound of Freedom.
Yeah. Oh, this is happening in South America. This is happening. It's just so sad it's happening there. And I think it gives these people this wrong idea. Or if it's here, it's these bad guys. It's
bad apple.
It's the bad apples. It's the rough part of town, like you said. But I think with the stories we're hearing it is literally, the leaders in the community, the shepherds, the justice system, those who should be protecting are preying on our children.
Right.
And it knows no political bounds. You said earlier, Utah's a red state. Florida's a red state. It's seemingly doing everything right. It knows no bounds politically.
Exactly.
It's not like, oh, well, it can get away with it in Michigan because Michigan's a more liberal state, but this would never happen in Utah or would never happen under DeSantis's rule.
Nope. Happens everywhere. And it happens in your own backyard.
So as we wrap up, I'd like to hear your closing thoughts to our audience.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing on that last thing. So they did a study of men who buy women, and they did an online baiting and posted a Backpage type ad, and they wanted to see who the buyers were who were clicking on the ad. And they gave them a series of 3 escalating warnings. And so after a guy said, yeah, I want to get a girl, driven to my house and dropped off for sex tonight, and, they would come back with like, yeah, we think we might be out of adults. So that was sort of the first nod to the fact that, like, you might be buying an underage girl, right? And now, to be fair, the men had started out trying to buy an adult for sex. This was not necessarily a legal transaction in every state, but not as bad of a transaction, right? So the question was, if circumstance arose, like, how would it roll, right? So the first statement is something like, yeah, we might be out of adults. And what percentage of the men would continue with the transaction? Well, a lot of them did. And then they got a second warning if they'd continued past the first sort of, easy warning. And it was like, yeah, we're out of adults. You're going to basically be stuck with somebody under 18. And lots of the men who had started out wanting to buy an adult were like, yeah, that's totally fine if I get somebody who's under 18. And finally, the third warning was like, just hit him between the eyes. It was like, yo, dude, you're about to buy a kid for sex, and that's illegal in every state. You still want to hit the green button and continue? And they did. A lot of them. It was something like 49%. I think if it was either 42 or 49% continued with the transaction. So they didn't start out trying to buy a kid, but they were perfectly fine continuing.
It would have been interesting if they went from under 18 to like
under 12.
Under 12.
Yeah.
That would have been a very important thing, because I think people, 18, you know what I mean?
17, yeah.
17.
Yeah.
There's it would have been very interesting if they did something.
What's the psychology there? Is it like, well, I'm already doing something wrong,
so I may as well double down and keep going? Yeah, I don't know, because I'm not in a pedophile's head, but 42% were not the people we think of when we think of predators. It's not the guy in the trench coat waiting outside the junior high to like flash his parts and run away in a panel van. Like, no, they were upper middle class. They were from the good side of Atlanta, not the bad side of Atlanta, Georgia. And they had on average 2 or 3 kids and a white picket fence and a wife at home. And they had careers like ours. These were not people you could spot in a crowd. So you need to talk to your children about this issue, and you need to talk to your children about this issue before you think it's time to talk to your children about this issue. Because by the time they're in high school, one of their kids may already be being trafficked. And yes, it can happen to your kid. The 4.4 GPA, high school varsity, triple varsity in physics, taking all AP classes. We have rescued, my organization that I used to work with, rescued girls just like that who fell in love with a guy that they thought was their boyfriend. It was really a pimp who was 25 but looked like he was 12, re-enrolled in high school for the second time, treated her great for the first 3 months, sextorted her, took some naked photos of her at some point, and said, hey, after I drop you off at curfew at 10 p.m., you're going to climb back out your mommy's bedroom or your window after your mommy and daddy go to bed, get in my car, and I'm going to sell you for sex. And the girl's like, no, you're not. And he's like, yeah, you are, because if you don't, I'll take these pictures and I'll sextort you. I'll send them to your daddy's a pastor. I'll send them to his entire church and your mommy's entire law firm and all of your high school friends. Most kids do not have the courage and the frontal lobe development. Most adults don't even have the courage to not be extorted in that particular circumstance. So these kids end up getting sextorted.
Can I add something? Most politicians.
Yes. You want to handle the problem with the bad political thing we've been dealing with for so many years. You need to handle sex trafficking, because it is the only crime left that allows people leverage. Nobody cares if you cheat on your taxes or your spouse. Every politician does almost, like at this point. Like you go, oh, that guy cheated on his wife. Everybody's like, yeah, so I knew that. Like I knew him in high school. He was cheating way back then. You want to blackmail a politician? You show up with a Hunter Biden laptop with some cocaine and some 7-year-olds on it. That'll do you. And so if you want our politicians to be active and concerned and voting, and you wonder why they're being impotent and they seem to be controlled, in many cases, they made a misstep and somebody's got a record of it. So if you keep the morals and the ethics in on your boys, if you teach boys and girls when they're little, you don't buy people and you don't let yourself be bought. And these are the signs and symptoms. If your girlfriend's losing weight and she's sad and she's depressed, and your 4.3 GPA girlfriend has now got, all D's and F's, and she doesn't seem to give a shit. Yeah, she might have a drug habit. Yeah, she might just have picked up an anorexia, bulimia problem. Or yeah, she might have fallen in love with a guy who's now sextorting her and selling her from 12 to 5 a.m. every night after her parents go to bed, which is a girl we rescued like that.
Yeah, that's Mary Beth.
Yes, from our show. And that's actually the interesting thing that I'm taking away from listening to your story is all the parallels. As extreme as it is and crazy as this story is, it mirrors so many of the survivor stories that we've been hearing and showing many of you on our show. You see the overlaps with the mandated reporters. You see the overlaps with the extortion and the blackmail. Yeah. You see elements from every part of this story.
Because it's a recipe.
It is. And it's a currency, too.
It's a currency. It's the biggest currency. The profit margin on selling human beings for sex is almost 100%. whether you're in Asia or here. It's a Happy Meal, one Happy Meal a day to keep the kid alive, or a cup of rice a day if you're in a brothel town like I work in Southeast Asia. And a hotel room here that's $50 a night. You got 10 girls in there. You're making a ton of cash selling these girls, hundreds of dollars each time, multiple times a night. There's 5 or 10 in a harem. These guys are not paying taxes. The only hard cost you have is food and an occasional hotel room. It is damn near a 95+% profit margin industry compared to Coke. And here's the thing, when somebody buys a girl for sex and they like it, you don't need to go buy more girl to sell that guy more girl tomorrow night. I sell you a girl, hypothetically, you like it, you come back tomorrow night, I got the same girl. I'm renting her over and over until she dies, which on average is about a 7-8 year life expectancy according to the FBI. Once they're first turned out at age 12 on average here in America. They're dead or dying by the time that they can vote. But when you look at that and you compare it to cocaine, I sell you cocaine tonight, you like it, you come back to me. I need to take half of the money you gave me last night, go get more cocaine from my supplier to sell you more cocaine tomorrow. Same is true of guns or any other product. This is not a product. You're selling a human being. You're renting a human being until they die. And that is why every single gangbanger from Comps and Watts, where I live, all the way up to the biggest mafias in the world that we fight when we're in Southeast Asia, the Japanese and Russian mafias are running Southeast Asia, the Yakuza, the Russian mafias, every criminal, these guys are bright. They could be captains of industry had they just decided to do something legal with their life. They are smart guys, and they have moved away from running guns and drugs and into running human beings because the profit margin is unbeatable. And that is what we are contending with. You need your children to know about this in an age-appropriate way. You need to educate them. And my call to action would be is it doesn't get better for your lack of confronting it. It doesn't go away because you're not wired that way and you can't conceive of it happening. It happens. And if you want it to not happen to your kids, if you want to be the hero that God put you on this planet to be, you need to be educated, and you need to educate others, and you need to take the next damn step. And in the case in Florida, the next step is go to my website, leighdundas.com, go to the child abuse page, read it, look at the photos on the bottom, and if you think there is something wrong with this case, go do the 4 steps of homework. Write DeSantis, email DeSantis, keep hitting all those agencies, DCF, DeSantis, the AG's office, Attorney General's office, and the Judicial Qualifications Commission, because that is how we change America. We make it so hot and so painful for our elected officials to not listen to us that they are forced to listen to us and forced to actually do the right thing. And the right thing is very clear in this case.
I love it. Alexia, what are your closing thoughts?
You know, April's a really special month, not just because it's my birthday month.
Happy birthday!
All month long. But April is also Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. Yeah. So I think these days it's every day and every month for all of us in this room. It's a holiday. Can't even call it a holiday. It's the gift that keeps on giving, because it just never ends.
No.
And as much as we started this to be political, it's definitely dovetailed into something a lot more than that. And hearing stories like yours, like the case you're working on, it fires me up. It really does. It just, if that doesn't put a fight in you, if Leigh doesn't just put you on fire, I mean, you are half asleep and you probably are on the wrong channel. So
I don't think anybody listening, if they're in it this far, they're on the right channel. One more quick shout out. The dad actually made a motion to get all of the Give, Send, Go money that we raised for the mom, because that's the kind of charmer he is. He moved to the court to garnish the mother's Give, Send, Go account. So if you want to support this case, feel free to just give to my nonprofit now. Dad can't get his hands on that. And that's on my website. Now, the other thing I would say is go to my Healthy Living page. I'm not charging the family a dime. I don't charge when we do the child trafficking work, but I do have a mortgage like most of you. I wasn't born with the last name Kennedy, and there's no trust fund in my future that I'm aware of. So if you're interested about healthy living, if you're interested about oxygen water that made a woman's thumb regrow after it was severed off, because oxygen does amazing things when you oxygenate your body. If you have aches and pains, we do umbilically derived stem cell, and that's actually one of the things we're here in Utah to do this month and this weekend. So if you have any questions on that, that's the Healthy Living page on my website. And that is how I get support to stay in the fight, because it's sure as shooting the mother can't afford to pay people because the father has garnished all of the money she's ever made in her life, because that's how it rolls in the state of Florida. You're a police chief accused of raping your kid, they pay you at the expense of the non-offending victim. They actually garnished the kid's allowance bank account money, over $1,000 when she was 11 years old. If you can imagine. Yeah. So if you're fired up by that kind of injustice, Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I don't care if you have a law degree or not. If you have a freaking heart, go on the website and go write DeSantis until he is forced to do something about this case.
Awesome. You know, Alexi mentioned that we see these very similar stories. I mean, we've made it a point to talk to as many survivors as possible.
Yeah.
Because we do know this is happening. And the sad thing is, many of the stories we have, they don't have a Leigh Dundas to fight for them. They are getting buried by the justice system. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that's really put a fight in us to fight this, is because we realize how betrayed these people are. And again, David Hamblin, not one survivor has seen justice from this guy.
Or seen a day in court. If you can get past all the technicalities and snafus from the very same people that are supposed to be prosecuting it and protecting them from the sheriff's office themselves.
Yeah, the perpetrators, the protectors, are perpetrating and they're protecting themselves and not the victims and the survivors. And it is horrible, but I got to say thank you to you guys, because nobody knows about this if nobody gives the Leigh Dundases of the world a microphone. So you are doing God's work. If we had had people like you in the middle of Auschwitz standing there rolling video and rolling sound, it wouldn't have gone on as long as it did. It wouldn't have ever gone on, because people would have been like, what the hell is going on over in Germany right now? So we need to shine a light on this, and we can't do it without all of the actual true media, which you're looking at, because we know we can't listen to CNN anymore. So with that, I just want to wish you a very happy birthday and say thanks for having me today.
You're the gift that keeps on giving.
I try.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. And just one thing to remember, Utah is ranked 6th in the country for rape. But catch this. Do you know what our conviction rate is?
No.
3%.
God. I'm coming to Utah after Florida.
Okay.
We need you.
With only a 3% conviction rate, we're ranked 6th in the country per capita. So
in a red state.
In a red state.
Red state
corruption doesn't follow party lines.
No.
Corruption doesn't follow certain religions.
Nope.
Power corrupts everybody. And to our people here in Utah, God bless you. God bless you for coming on and putting a fire in our audience's hearts. It's there. I mean, our audience.
Oh yeah.
We have people who love freedom, but the key is this: we have so limited power in DC. We have no control over what's going on in South America and these other. But you have the ability to make a difference here.
Right.
You talk about what she's doing in Florida. We can fight like that in our backyard. Yeah. We can get our backyard under control. We can shine the light of accountability on the corruption in the institutions and in the justice system that is enslaving our children.
Indeed.
And that's you guys that can make that difference. So please support Leigh Dundas and pray maybe she'll be fighting with us here. And bringing
it's a hot date,
and bringing the fire of justice upon our politicians and those here in the state that are allowing this rampant abuse to happen. So God bless you guys, and thank you so much, Leigh.
Thank you guys for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you.